Hello and welcome to the preview show brought to you by the No Nay Never podcast. It's Sunderland away. It's our opposition view. Let's go. Hello, listeners. It's another preview show, and I am joined by our very special guest. Of course, we've got Statman Dave, the best view in football, as he likes to call himself. But we are joined this week by our very special friend, Jonny from the Roker Report. Jonny, welcome to the No Nay Never podcast.
Hello, thank you very much for having us.
You're welcome. Now, listeners, Jonny's a very new contact of ours. We were starting to prepare for our our preview show earlier on this week, and Jonny and I both had the pleasure of meeting on Gab Sutton's feed going over the weekend, and we were on the same show, and I did what we do best at No Nay Never and messaged him straight away and grabbed him for our preview show. We are, of course, away this weekend, probably going to be our toughest fixture to date. I know we're only 3 games in, but it's going to be a tough one. We are away at Sunderland, who have also, like the Clarets, got off to a flying start. This is probably going to be one of our strongest tests of the season. So Jonny's going to join us this evening to talk through what Sunderland can expect from this season, how their new manager's doing, who we need to be fearful of on Saturday, and of course what he thinks the prediction will be for the game. Before we get there, we're going to hand over the reins to Dave Statman Roberts, because you're going to kick us off the previous show with a couple of stats about this fixture, Dave.
And I've got a few stats intertwined through the show, starting off with a couple for you. Burnley's biggest ever away win at Sunderland was by a 4-0 scoreline. That was in November 1965. Our goal scorers were Gordon Harris, Willie Irvin, plus a brace from Ralph Coates. And after a good start to that season, the Clarets were also on top of the First Division at the time. Also, when the teams met at Roker Park in April 1972, the Burnley team bus was involved in a crash an hour before kickoff on their way to the ground and had to rely on a lift from a Sunderland supporters coach. The players changed on the way and made it in time for kickoff, but lost the match 4-3.
Where do you find these stats from, Dave? Like that went dark very, very quickly. But yeah, let's move on. Jonny, why don't you kick us off, please? I mean, it's been a bit of a roller coaster for Sunderland over the last couple of years, none more so than the quest to try and find a manager. Disappointing couple of seasons for you, particularly when you're in the Championship for quite a long time and you've been in the Premier League and you've got aspirations to get up to the Premier League. It can be a very frustrating league to play your football in. So will you kick us off? Just summarise how last season went, you know, what happened with the interim manager, the new manager, the interim manager, and just that slight, I guess, discomfort around everything that's been going on.
Yeah, well, I mean, roller coaster is pretty accurate. You've summed it up. I mean, the general life of a Sunderland fan's a roller coaster, so it's never a dull moment. But last season, I think in particular, we were in a way, I think, victims of our own success in terms of getting in the playoffs, because that first season back from League One where we scraped 6th, I think it's fair to say. That was basically entirely down to Amad Diallo. He was that good that season. You know, when you have a lone player from a Premier League side who, let's be honest, we never had a chance of keeping, trying to plug that gap the season after. Obviously, we didn't end up going up. Luton went up instead. And then, yeah, it's a bit of a sort of back down to earth. You know, we kind of had like a magic carpet ride almost, in a sense, like, you know, straight back up, winning games, playing good football. And then it was kind of really back to reality in the second season. And like I say, an Ahmad-shaped hole in the side, really. Yeah. And Ross Stewart as well, a big miss after his injury in the first season back, and then losing him to Southampton near the end of the summer window last season. It just kind of crippled us before we could get going, really. Tony Mowbray was picking up the pieces, and he really struggled to... We started off okay, actually. I mean, we were still in and around the top 6 till I think February, but really before Christmas you could see the wheels were coming off. Really struggling to create, struggling to put chances away more so than create them. Really struggling to get the ball in the net. And then I think you could almost see on a weekly basis the confidence just sapping out with the players. And we're such a young, no, exactly. And we're such a young group. Once you start going in either direction, uphill or downhill, you can just keep going. And we'd been going uphill for so long. I think having that knock and then, you know, a bad run of results, struggling for performances for the first time as well. It was a death spiral, really, all the way at the end of the season.
When you say struggling for performances, what was the problem? Was it tactically? Was it the players? Was it the attacking threat? What was it?
I think in the latter days of Mowbray's tenure, it wasn't so much tactics as it was just it had got a bit stale, I think, and we were really struggling for ideas. Like I say, without Ross Stewart, without Ahmad, we were trying to play the same way, and it wasn't quite as good.
Yeah.
But I think Michael Beale came in, and that was a calamity from start to finish.
Yeah, I was trying to be polite with that. I was like, do I raise this? What do I do? Do we let him go through this therapy?
I need it. I should lay down on that behind, isn't it? Like really let it all out. But,
talk to us. We're here to listen, Jonny. We're here to listen.
But I mean, you could see the fans didn't accept him from before day one. It was. But the biggest tactical complaint I think most Sunderland fans would have with Michael Beale above anything else was we became so passive. We had absolutely nothing in terms of pressing. We'd sit back and let teams come on to us. And that then bled into the attacking side of the game where we had no urgency. We weren't quick enough. And, when you're trying to break teams down, if there's spacing behind, great. But if there's any level of defensive stability in who you're playing, you need pace of passing, pace of movement, and everything needs to feel quite fluid. And he almost made a conscious effort to go completely away from that.
Oh, really?
Yeah, which is Tony Mowbray, even in his worst games as Sunderland manager, we were sort of up and at people. We wanted to get into their half, and we were aggressive because with a young, hungry team, it's almost like the recipe's given for you. You just need you just need to tweak.
They need direction. They just need to be told what to do and then leave everything else with them. They've got the energy, they've got the enthusiasm, they've got the will to live, and they've got the courage. They don't necessarily feel the same level of fear that some other more experienced players might have, particularly in the pressure situation. So yeah, I get that. Look, it was quite interesting actually because I hadn't realised until I was doing some research for this show that Phil Parkinson left you to go to Wrexham. Is that right? Back in...
well,
what happened there?
Phil Parkinson was managing in the season that got curtailed due to the pandemic.
The COVID one.
The season where Wickham nicked into the playoffs on points per game, which I'm over it. I'm really over it. I don't hate Wickham at all. I don't really enjoy every time they get beat. But I mean, you could say he left us, but if you find a single Sunderland fan who thought he should have stayed, I'll give you 100 quid.
Yeah, no, I get that, and obviously, his career and his profile as well has just gone through the roof with everything that's been going on at Wrexham. But looking through that, so obviously that was the COVID years, and like you say, he joined you in November 2020, and then obviously that was. October 2019, and he'd gone by November 2020 anyway, in the pandemic. And then we've had since then, this is bearing in mind, this is only over the last 4 seasons. We've had Andrew Taylor, Lee Johnson, Mike Dodds, Alex Neil, Martin Canning, Tony Mowbray, Mike Dodds again, Michael Beale, Mike Dodds again. And then finally, is it Lebris or Lebris? How do we pronounce it?
So I thought it was Lebris, but apparently it's Lebris.
Lebris.
Yeah, Régis Lebris.
Régis Lebris, how wonderfully French sounding, because of course he is. So obviously not a lot of stability in terms of managers over the last 4 seasons. And that's not a 4 seasons isn't a lot. It really isn't. This is your 5th season. But it feels like from the reports that we're hearing, for what we're seeing in the press, and of course your performances so far this season, it feels like you might have finally got a managerial appointment right. So talk us through how has his appointment been received? How has his early performances been received? And what is the optimism and the Sunderland fans feel around your new exotic manager?
Yeah, well, we almost hamstrung him from the day he came in purely because of the length of time it took to appoint him.
Yeah.
So, when we got rid of Michael Beale, obviously, the feeling around the club was rock bottom. I mean, the fans were furious. And the club came out with a sort of statement like, we've learned our lesson. We're going to get the next one right. We're really going to put everything into the search for this next head coach. And that was I think it was maybe February, Michael Beale left. And then Lebris never actually was appointed until, long after the season had finished.
June, wasn't it?
I think it was late June as well.
Yeah.
So I think it was just before the players came back for pre-season, so it might not be
same for us. Yeah, we agreed exactly the same. Yeah,
and before even looking at anything to do with Labrise himself, just the length of time it took and the bad feeling, like people were ready to jump on him for any perceived errors or anything he could say wrong in press conferences. So I was concerned for him when he came in. But I think he was, he's spoken quite well since he came in. It's a bit of a cliche, I know, like he speaks well, don't they all? But,
Until they don't.
Yeah, exactly. But he seemed quite unfazed by it all, quite level-headed, which I thought struck the right chord. But then more importantly than anything, the team have played good stuff on the pitch, and that's, you could be George Clooney who speaks like Barack Obama, but if you don't win games on the pitch, nobody's going to take to you.
We're simple pleasures, but football fans, we know what we like. We're like runners, and we just like people who
we're like grafters. We're like people who run through brick walls.
Yes. Then put your head on the line, so then you're fine. Yeah, Ashley Barnes run through bricks to get it. Yeah, you're proud favourites. We're very easy to please, to be
honest. But yeah, in terms of what's got people optimistic for the season now is, I mean, two games, 2 wins, you can't sniff at, but the way that we played against Sheffield Wednesday and in a lot of the games in pre-season, very aggressive, high pressing. That's something that I think we've not really seen implemented. I mean, probably as long as I've been watching Sunderland, really. We haven't had somebody come in and properly have a regimented style of, pressing, moving in packs, and just really looking organised and well drilled. And it sounds so simple when you say it like that, but that really is like such a massive part of why. I mean, me personally, I'm hugely excited, and I think the fan base in general have really warmed to him. And obviously, sticking 4 past Sheffield Wednesday on Sunday doesn't hurt.
Yeah, no, it definitely. It was the same for us. We've scored 9 goals already, and it's like, we didn't. I think it was about 3 months to score 9 goals the whole of last season. It's like, this is amazing. But there's so many parallels between what you've gone through and what we've been through and what you're going through. It's like, gosh, Burnley fans know all about a reputation and not being known for high press and fast flowing, entertaining football. And when Company was appointed with us 2 years ago, that was just, we took the league by storm 2 seasons ago. It was a ridiculous season.
I mean, you were a superb team that season as well. Really just brushing teams aside.
Yeah, and it feels like this season we're going to do the same thing again, albeit we, same as you, appointed him. We didn't expect to have to appoint a manager. Ours was taken from us, albeit probably the best thing that could have happened actually in the end. And we've just appointed our manager. Scott Parker came with loads of warnings from Fulham and Burnley and Bournemouth fans. Oh, he plays really boring football. You'll win 1-0, you'll be bored to tears. It's like, not seeing much of that so far. But we're very aware that, we're doing the same thing. We've completely overhauled the style of football that Burnley, and dare I say Sunderland, have been known for a long time. Sunderland, Burnley, Stoke, those kind of teams, Preston, the kind of traditional championship sides that were not known for anything other than proper championship football. Can you do it on a Tuesday night in Stoke, Sunderland, Burnley, wherever it is? So from that perspective, I'm really looking forward to the game at the weekend, because we've got 2 sides who've gone through a rebirth of making themselves modern and relevant to 2024 football and are doing it really, really well. I think it's going to be a really cracking game. Dave, with that in mind, it's not all about the weekend. We've played before. Introduce our feature of our memory match, please. No one ever remembers. What special Sunderland Burnley game have you picked for us?
We're going back to a more recent game this time. We've done quite a few older games, previous episodes so far this season, but we're going back to our last promotion season, 2022-23. And the match in question was, an entertaining one. I'm not spoiled it too much. I think we've got a little contribution from another member of the No Nay Never team who was there, is going to give his thoughts of the
Definitely.
match.
It is. Of course, we're bringing in regular panelist Tom Whitaker, who is going to give us his thoughts on that memory match. Does he remember it, and what did he take from that? Take it over, Tom.
Hi, No Nay Never listeners. It's Tom back again, just reminiscing about the Sunderland away game of a couple of years ago. It was really a game of 2 halves. My personal memories of it are what a nightmare it was to get to the stadium in the first place. There was a problem with the metro. The bus replacement service was terrible. I ended up getting to the ground just as it kicked off, and then the stewarding was absolutely awful. You'd think Sunderland would be used to seeing a crowd, but no, it took us about 10-15 minutes to actually get into the stadium. We weren't 2-0 down yet at that point, but it followed pretty quickly in the first half. It was a really poor performance. Ashley Barnes running around like he had a bag of cement strapped to his back, and yeah, we just didn't look in the game at all, and you were thinking, God, it was a long trip and a lot of frustration for nothing. But the second half, we came out and we just looked at a different team. Remember Nathan Teller scored a header, I'm pretty sure, which must be a rare one for him. And then, of course, the most famous goals would be the ones from Benson. That was a kind of a cross that went all the way in, I think. But Zaroury's goal was absolutely fantastic. The kind of thing you see on telly, the really top players do, just coming inside and just bending it into the top corner. And that's when you knew we've got a really special player here. I'm gutted to see him go today because he's been treated really shabbily, I think, by the club in the last year. And I was really hoping that with company gone, we might be able to get his head back in it and get him playing for Burnley again. But obviously it's not to be. But that's obviously a fantastic memory. Brownhill sealed it near the end as well. And in the end, it was a great day out and it was worth travelling. I always like a trip to Sunderland. Really nice fans, really knowledgeable and really fair as well. So I'll be there on Saturday, hoping for perhaps a better first half performance than we got a couple of years ago. But if it's the same result, then I won't be complaining. Up the Clarets.
So, Jonny, a game of two halves. We trailed by 2 goals at half time, and the second half goals changed it around a little bit with the final goal being Burnley 4, Sunderland 2, Burnley 4. Do you remember that game?
I remember how absolutely chuffed I was at half time, thinking, I tell you what, lads, we're going to stick one right up these here. But no, not
Sit
quite.
down.
Yeah, put back in our box pretty sharpish in that second half, as I recall.
Yeah, it definitely was. I mean, it was just, I think Dave mentioned, wasn't it, Dave? It was probably the game that completely set our season off, didn't it? Like, we never really looked back from that game.
Yeah, I think we were doing reasonably well. We were on a decent run when we played that, but it just seemed to reinvigorate us and give us confidence. And from there was kind of no looking back. So it was pivotal from that respect. Not necessarily a turning point, but definitely one where we got a big boost from it. Winning a game when you're losing two goals down at halftime doesn't happen that often. So it was a big result.
Yeah, and I would most definitely take that again come the weekend. Yes, definitely. Okay, so moving on to the second half of our opposition view, Dave. A couple more stats from you, please, before we head back to our fantastic guest for a little bit more Sunderland knowledge, please. What have you got for us?
Yeah, a bit of relevant info. Among the 35 players who've represented both clubs since World War II are the likes of Billy Elliott, Gordon Harris, Mick Doherty, Leighton James, Gordon Armstrong, Kevin Ball, Stephen Caldwell, Phil Bardsley, and Stephen Fletcher. Burnley. Finally, my final selected stat, Burnley failed to win any of our first 7 visits to play Sunderland at the Stadium of Light. We broke that particular duck in style on our last visit, as we've already mentioned just now.
Yes, some real legends there. Stephen Fletcher, I loved it. Stephen Fletcher was one of those players who I was really gutted that we only spent, as most teams do, the first year we went into the Premier League. We only lasted 1 year because teams like Burnley on the first season of the Premier League don't tend to last very long. Stephen Fletcher was awesome. And Kevin Ball, God, I loved him. He was such a good player.
Kevin Ball, give him the keys to Sunderland right now. We all absolutely adore him.
Yeah, he's really famous. When we played in the East Lancs derby, he was a proper Burnley, like he'd been with us for ages. And our absolute arch rival at the time was a player called David Dunn, who was one of them, like born and raised. And there was a point where he was getting really cocky in the first half, and Bowley just came and did a Bowley special, took his legs. He did about 6 somersaults in the air before he landed on the ground. He got sent off to the cheers of the Burnley fans. Did he get sent off? Did he just get booked, Dave? He got sent off, right?
It was the second half. He got sent off. Yeah. The best part was the interview after the game where he said, and what went on here, he said, "Oh, it was just a clash of shins," but we all saw it.
Well, he slide tackled that hard. He nearly scored an own goal for us at St James's Park from the halfway line by slide tackling someone.
Amazing.
What is that?
I think if what we were talking about before, I think if you could pick one player who is quintessentially both Burnley and Sunderland, Ball is the one. It's like just fit in both of our sides perfectly well. And what we were saying before, we love a grafter. Anybody who can do those tackles is great. So bringing it forward now to the current time, obviously it's going to be a really tough game for us at the weekend. And to be honest, my heart is telling me that we'll win because you've got to back your boys, but my head's genuinely concerned about this game. I think it could be our first loss of the season. Who do we need to keep an eye out for? Who's going to cause us the most problems in anywhere on the pitch?
You know, when people say who's going to be the Premier League top scorer, but except Haaland, we need to do who's going to cause you the most problems, but except Jack Clarke. Because we can't I can't talk about him every single week all season. But I mean, obviously he's the name on everyone's lips. As long as he's still in the squad, which Lebris in his press conference today was asked directly about the speculation. He said he's trained, he's available for the weekend. So as far as we know, he'll be playing. But watch this space.
Well, we think that you probably should rest him just in case you don't want anything to happen to him. If the deal falls over and you can't get that payday, I think safety first.
Yeah, you'd have him wrapped in cotton wool. But yeah, obviously Clarke's a name. But I think another name who really deserves a bit of airtime is the man on the opposite wing, Patrick Roberts. We saw 2 seasons ago that he is a class player, and he's right up there in the top end of the best players in the Championship on his day. Really struggled last season, both in terms of his actual output of numbers, but also his performances. He looked lost on the pitch at times, I thought. But in the first 2 games this season, under Lebris and in pre-season, he has looked a man possessed. He's so good on the ball, but now he's direct again. He seems like he's purposeful in what he's doing, which I think comes from above. I think he's one of these players who does need to be coached and kind of drilled in the right way, maybe an arm around the shoulder. But he's with the ball at his feet, like genuinely his ability at dribbling, he's top 10, top 6 Premier League. The problem is everything else, everything else that drags him down. His consistency's not always there, but he started this season like a house on fire, put in the free kick, which set up the goal, opening goal against Cardiff, put in the free kick to get the opening goal against Sheffield Wednesday. And he's had a couple of, fizzes from distance that have just bent, around that sort of far post top corner area. He's getting his eye in. So if he gets one right at the weekend, then, he could cause you some real trouble. But that said, obviously Jack Clarke really is the man. He's different.
Yeah, no, I can imagine. So where does that leave you then in terms of this season? What are your aims for the season? Have that changed because of your start? Like, what are you hoping for out of this campaign?
I think the most we can realistically hope for is top 6. I don't think we've necessarily got it in us to mount a push for the automatic promotion spot. Certainly, I don't think we could win the title. I mean, never say never, but
no, that's ours. You're not having that. We
It'll take some stopping, I think.
Depends on who we've got left. We might have a very average squad come the 1st of September. We're selling everyone.
Yeah, I mean, even if you let a load of them go, I still think you've got it in you.
Well, we've got a squad of 37, which is a little bit ridiculous. So I think you could sell an entire first team and still have a good squad. So
you just copying Chelsea. But yeah, no, I think top 6 if stay reasonably injury free. If we keep Jack Clarke, then that's certainly within our sights. If we lose him, depends a little bit what happens between now and the slam and shut of the window. But even without Clarke, I think we'd have just enough about us to maybe get in and around the top 6. I think if we finished anywhere outside the top 10, you'd be looking at
that feels disappointed.
Yeah, that's when you might start casting glances around and, okay, where's this gone wrong? Because anywhere between 10th and 6th, okay, we just missed out. Top 6, you're laughing. Anything outside of that, I think with the squad we've got and the players that we have, a lot of teams in a lot of different leagues are looking at our players enviously, and that means you're doing something right. So you've got to deliver on the pitch and in the league table at the end of the season. But yeah,
definitely, it's exciting times. No, I think it's going to be a really cracking game. I'm a lot more nervous. I mean, I was relatively nervous going into the Luton game at the beginning of the season. It was a bit of a draw for us because 2 sides who played each other in the Premier League last year doesn't really tell us where we are in the Championship. And, going away to Luton's a really tough game. And we were profoundly stronger than Luton. And then Cardiff, who I expected good things of this season, they've got themselves a settled manager again, and they were, we beat them 5-0. It was a really strong performance. I think this is a completely different kettle of fish. So, we'll need to say where we get to. Okay, Dave, let's round up and finish off our preview of the game itself. Can you give us the match overview, please? What stats are important for this fixture?
Yeah, Burnley have played 58 previous away matches at Sunderland, 52 in the league and 6 in other competitions. Other than one or two notable exceptions, though, it hasn't exactly been a happy hunting ground for us, with just one win, the one we mentioned earlier, and 3 draws in 11 visits over the last 50 years. The overall record, though, is played 58, won 10, drawn 17 and lost 31. Burnley have scored 71 goals and conceded 110.
Lovely stuff. And then let's hand over to regular panelist George Poole, who's going to give us all the referee details in that charming way that young George does.
Stephen Martin of Stafford started his refereeing journey in 2002, and he made it onto the EFL list in 2008. The desire to be in charge clearly runs this family, as his father and grandfather were both officials in the Football League. Now, he has refereed 5 previous Burnley matches, all of which were in the Championship between 2014 and 2022. And the Clarets have won all 5, 2 at Turf Moor and 3 away from home. So it seems that he has been a lucky omen for us in the past. The same can be said for red cards. He's shown 2 of them in the 5 previous matches, both to opposition players. Anthony Kay of Milton Keynes in 2016 and Joe Perreault of Swansea in 2022. So let's hope the good luck continues. Ta-ra!
And as that wraps up our preview of this weekend's fixture, we're going to come very shortly to get an opposition and our score prediction. But before we get to that point, do please check out Dave's website for all the facts and stats about Burnley Football Club. Dave's put a phenomenal amount of effort into the preview show over the years, and you can find pretty much everything that you need to know from the best viewing football. That is Dave Roberts. He's essentially the Google of Burnley Football Club, and you can find it. Oh, let me put that back on, actually. Where is the website for it, Dave? It is... There you go.
There's a short link on there. It's bit.ly/Burnley Stats QL. QL standing for
Excellent. Excellent stuff. We will hand this to our opposition first. We will remember our manners. I've got managers in the brain because I was researching yours. Remember our manners. Jonny, score prediction from you, please.
This is a tough one to predict, this, because I'm a bit like you. Heart saying I think we'll do it, but head's very, very cautious. I think if I was going with me head, I think there'll be goals in it, because I do think both teams playing away that's conducive to good football. I can see you edging it. I think it's going to be similar to the last meeting at the stadium, which was 4-2. I think I could see like a 3-2 or something like that. But I think I'm going to just edge it in your favour and go 3-2 to Burnley.
Ooh,
but I think we'll run you close.
Oh yeah, 100%. Yeah. Dave, your prediction, please.
I think Johnny's more confident than me. I think I'm siding with you. I think it's going to be a tough match. Ooh. A draw wouldn't be a bad result. Obviously, we'd like to have a win and continue the run. I think we can do that, but I'm kind of edging towards a draw. So I'm going to predict a 1-1 draw.
I am also heading towards a draw. I think this is going to be a really tough test for us, and I'm not feeling that confident. I share both of your views here. I'm going to say 2-2. I'm going to go for a draw. Listeners, you know the drill by now. Let us have your score predictions, please. You can put a comment in the box below if you're watching here. And while you're doing that, hit that subscribe button, please. Or you can contact us on our social media channels. What's the score going to be? Who are our scorers? And how are they going to score? Let's have some fun. Dave, what have you given us for our wider EFL talking point? What's happening in the wider world of the EFL, please, this week?
Yeah, well, I was racking my brains again about what we can discuss, and we kind of did touch on it slightly earlier, but I think we'll go into it a little bit more detail now. There's still a lot of uncertainty in the EFL, with many clubs, particularly Burnley, having to deal with player departures and having to find suitable replacements while trying to get to grips with the opening matches. Question is it good that the transfer window remains open for the first 3 weeks of the season, or should it be closed before the new campaign kicks off?
Yes, Jonny, both of us are struggling with this at the moment. Obviously, you've got some uncertainty for losing your key player. We've got uncertainty of losing 90% of the squad. We genuinely have no idea who is going to be playing for us. A lot of Vincent Kompany's players out the door. How do you feel about this? Because I can see both sides of it. What's your gut telling you about having a transfer window that closes after the season's finished? Not after the season's finished, after the season started. My God, that would be impressive. Season started. Sorry.
My big problem with it is that because we tried it. Well, I say we. I think they tried it, didn't they, in at least the Premier League a few years ago, to shut the window before the first game. But the problem is, it's all well and good, England, the FA, England, the Premier League, the EFL going, oh, we'll shut before the season. But then you've got a load of other leagues across Europe who are all still open until, the end of August, start of September. And then, let's say we close, gets to this point, somebody comes and unsettles your best player anyway. They get the head turned, they leave. Then you're really in trouble because you can't bring anybody in.
No,
it's bad enough scrabbling around trying to bring somebody in with the funds you get, but if in an ideal world we could get everyone to agree, right, the transfer window is this day to this day, and that's when it is, and that's that. Happy days. I'm all for shutting it before the season, because I agree that it's silly to you're making your plans for the season, you're playing games, you're naming people in the team, and then they're gone within a week.
Yeah.
You can't plan long term with that. But equally, you can't cut your nose off to spite your face.
No, you can't have best of both worlds, especially if you want to use the European market. And at the moment, the European market is such an important part of our business model, as many sides outside the top 6 or 7 in the Premier League. Our players are our strongest asset. We don't have money coming in from across the world. We don't have global image rights that we can sell. We don't have, well, we do have a documentary, so do you, but I can't imagine that either of us have had. Well, your documentary was one that started it all.
Yeah, we're the trendsetters. Just put some fans looking depressed all over Netflix and the money comes rolling in.
It is. It's such a fantastic documentary, and I think so many people. And then obviously the Welcome to Wrexham has blown that completely out the water. And I think Mission to Burnley is a lot more like Welcome to Wrexham than it was to yours. But I think I agree. I wonder whether a compromise is that we have an agreed transfer window for English players who are in our league that stops before the season starts, but then you get that extra month if you want to trade in Europe.
I'd be all for that. I think that'd be a great idea, like a domestic window and a European or worldwide window. I think that makes so much more sense. But try getting the word of sense past the decision makers at the FA or UEFA or FIFA. I mean, good luck.
And there's so many agendas. It's such a political. It's not going to work. Well, listeners, what do you think? That is our EFL talking point this week. Please contact us. Please leave your comments on this video. What is the solution to the transfer window? Does it need fixing? Are we all actually happy with it? Do we just have to live with the uncertainty as part of our game? Let us know your comments, please, in the chat box. Dave, we finish off this week's preview show, as we have been doing this season, with None and Never versus our opposition fan. We have a quiz question. I'm on my own this week. Adam's not joined us. I can't remember what he said he was doing. I think he's out with work or something, the little skiver. So I've got to do the quiz this week, and I did get it right. So I'm hoping. Now, no pressure, Jonny, but it's 2-0 to None and Never so far. So you're going to have to get a point on the board for the opposition view. No pressure. Dave, hit us. What are we answering this week?
Right. Well, I'm going to try and redress the balance a little bit. So I think Jonny might have an advantage in this.
Hang on a minute. You work for us. Did we not make this very clear? Honestly,
I'm trying to balance things out a bit. So the question relates to the question is in which year did Burnley play their final match at Sunderland's previous ground, Roker Park? But if you're a Sunderland fan and you know when this moved to the Stadium of Light from Roker Park, you probably have a slight advantage in knowing what the answer to the question might be.
Okay. Okay, Jonny, as our guest, and we do have manners here on our podcast, we offer you the choice of whether you want to guess first or second. So do you want me to guess first, or do you want to go first?
I think I've got to go first. If the question's catered to us, I can't take the easy way out. The problem is, instantly a year's gone into my head, and you start second guessing yourself. And now I'm all over the place.
I've got a year in my head, and I'm going to stick to it regardless of what you say. So
yeah,
I think you should get Natalie to answer.
No. I'm going to back myself. I'm going to say 1997, and please don't tell us I'm wrong.
Oh, okay. So my instinct was 1993. I've gone earlier, so I'm now not feeling very confident about that. But I'm going to say 93. That was my first instinct.
Right. Well, 1997 was when Sunderland moved to the Stadium of Light, but Burnley's final match at Sunderland's previous ground, Roker Park, was 1994. So, Natalie,
I was trying to run through in my head, like, where were we in 97? where would Burnley have been? Where were we in 96? Where would Burnley have been? I couldn't do it quick enough.
That's a tough gig. I mean, I think we could give an hour's show and I would be like, I don't know. I don't remember. I was
just going with, I know the move was 97, so it can't be any later than that. So I'm not going to embarrass myself too much.
Yeah, no, but, that was a good effort. Listen, I thought early 90s, and so I'm pretty pleased with that answer, and I'm glad
we got promoted. So Burnley got promoted that season and got relegated straight back. So we played Sunderland in 94, 95, and it was a 0-0 draw, the match at Roker Park.
No wonder nobody can remember it. Who remembers?
Who remembers? Although I'd be interested to know, like, particularly the old Burnley and Sunderland, there must have been so many 0-0s between us.
Oh God, yeah.
Can you imagine those older games? You'd be like,
aggregate score was probably about 5-4 over 100 years.
It will. I bet between us.
I know a website where you can go to check that.
Look at that. That's slick, Dave.
That's professional statisticianism.
I've taught him well. Well, listeners, let us wrap up the previous show there. I cannot tell you how grateful we are, Jonny. What a fantastic guest you've been in our show. Our listeners will love you. Tell our listeners how they can get hold of the Roker Report if they want to hear more about Sunderland.
If you can follow at Roker Report on Twitter, which is where all of the written content comes out. There's also rokerreport.sbnation.com. If you want to listen to the Roker Report podcast, that is available on all good podcasting platforms, Spotify, YouTube, iTunes. Just Google Roker Report and you'll find Summit.
Excellent. I love it. Dave, thank you again for your input this week. You're my favourite, you know you are. Do check out his website. He's told you twice now, for the best view in football, as he has pronounced himself. We will be back on Tuesday with the analysis show, looking back at that game at Sunderland. Did the Clarets do it? Was it 4-2 thriller? Was it a 0-0 draw? How did we compete against one of the strongest teams in this league, and surely ones that are going to be chasing for promotion this season? And then next week we'll be back with the preview show again. Looking forward to the East Lancs derby. It's the big one so soon in the season, so keep an eye out on socials for announcements of the game. Click subscribe, please, while you go. Don't disappear. You know, you've got work to do, listeners. We expect things from you. If you're watching this on our YouTube channel, please hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you don't miss an episode. If you're listening to the audio version of this, your usual podcast provider will give you the option to subscribe to our show. We love being part of your lives and we love your support. I've been Natalie Bromley. This has been the preview show brought to you by the Known and Never podcast. Until next time.
The Known and Never podcast is brought to you in association with the talkSPORT Fan Network. Our host and editor is Natalie Bromley, and the show is produced by Matt Moss. Our resident statistician is Dave Roberts, and our FPL expert is Adam Dennett. The analysis show team is collectively Tom Whittaker, Rich Steele, George Poole, Charlotte Rigby, and Adam Dennett. Our music is provided by George Gaskell, and our newsletter team is headed up by Jamie Smith. If you don't already, you can subscribe to our newsletter by visiting knownandnever.substack.com. Thanks as ever go to our partners talkSPORT. We are proud to be associated with the talkSPORT Fan Network.